Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. I'm Wendy, and on today's episode, we're doing 5 Wayfair dupes using Dollar Tree items for your Christmas home decor, and we are starting now. For our first project, we're doing this iced peppermint candy ribbon tree, and I think this is just so super cute, but it's also $52.99 on sale. I'm not gonna pay that, but I love the looks of this and how it's got this frosty little prettiness on top of the ribbon. I actually ended up not using my Dollar Tree ribbon, so I am using some Walmart fabric that I had some scraps of, some felt from Dollar Tree, and a cone. You could use some gingham ribbon from the Dollar Tree, which would still be super cutie patootie, or the Walmart kind that has this flour sack stripe on it. And then the cone I'm using, somebody gifted to me, and I decided I liked it a little bit better because it's taller, but you could use the styrofoam kind, or if you want to make it the same size as mine, you can use some poster board from the Dollar Tree and just wrap it in a cone and make it as tall as you want. So the first thing I wanted to do was give it that felt inside that the original piece had. So I took my felt and just laid my fabric on there and then hot glued it down. You could use fabric tack as well, but this was just the easiest way for me. And I'm going to go all the way around, and then I'm going to cut it down on top of the felt. And then I went back in with my ruler, and I'm going to measure 1/4 inch for each of my pieces of ribbon. And because this is striped, it was a lot easier to cut straight across, and I didn't have to measure all the way down. So I just followed my stripes and made it smaller. Now, if you do end up using ribbon, I think using that iron-on fusion tape would be easiest to get the felt bonded onto the ribbon, and that'll save a lot of time and gluing. You could also probably use a spray adhesive like tack, and I'm just not sure if it will stain the fabric. So anyway, I'm going to make my strips 4.5 inches long, and for my 11-inch cone, I ended up needing 57 pieces. So I'll do the math in a second to tell you how much you'll need. So now I'm going to take my cone and paint it using my Waverly White chalk paint because I didn't want any of the brown to show under my ribbons, which I know there's going to be a few of the gaps. I did fill in as much as I could, but then I ran out of my materials. So there are a couple of white spots. So now I'm going to take my ribbon and I'm going to fold it over and glue it together. And the only trick here is that you just want to make sure that if you're using the right side to be on top at the top, then you want to do that on all of your little pieces, if that makes sense. So I'm just folding it over and attaching it at the top, and I'm trying to keep my little openings in the front as close to the same size as possible, but they're not perfect and it doesn't need to be. So I'm just going to start gluing those at the bottom of my cone and then just keep moving up. Now I was thinking I was probably going to run out, so I'm spacing my loops a little bit further apart than I really needed to. But if you do this project, put them a little bit closer just so that it's a little fuller. On the inspiration piece, I think they used longer pieces and then had fewer loops altogether, but I think this way it's a little bit cuter. So once you complete one round, if the gap in between to finish that circle up is too small, just cut your ribbon down and make it a little more narrow and then glue it on just like normal, and then that'll fill in that gap without having the ribbon overlap onto the next one. And then when you move up to the next level, start in the middle of 2 of your ribbons. And again, I like to start in the back so that if I do have a gap, it won't show. And then in the inspiration piece, it has a little ball at the top of the tree. And so I'm using one of the small styrofoam filler packages and just took one of those balls and poked that onto the top of my cone. And then for the little snowy speckles, I'm going to take some white chalk paint and dilute it down, use my fan brush and start tapping it all over my tree, and it's done. And here's a look at our inspiration piece, and it's super sweet and cute and I love it, but I just wouldn't pay $53. And here's our version, which was a total of about $4, I guess. It's hard to say an exact price because I already had the cone, and if I didn't, I would have made it out of the poster board. The original version is 13 inches tall, whereas ours is 11 inches tall, so it's only 2 inches shorter. But I love how this turned out, and I hope you like it too. In today's episode, I'm teaming up with two more sweet friends, amazing crafters and sisters in Christ. Linda at FaithChick777 is one of the most talented creators ever. She's so fun to watch, and I can't wait for you to see what she came up with for her video. I've already seen them, and they are awesome. They're so high-end looking, and I just absolutely love her. And then Lisa Kennedy, the Dollar Mom, again, super creative and oh so sweet. She does farmhouse, DIYs, dupes, hauls, pretty much everything that you can think of. You will absolutely love her. So as soon as you're done here, head on over to their videos. I'll have them linked below. And if you're coming over from one of their channels, welcome. I am so happy you're here. For our next project, we're going to try duplicating this WD star sign. I don't know what WD stands for, but they want $29.99 for this, and it is a little bit larger and chunkier, but we're going to do it for a little bit cheaper and using Dollar Tree items. So the first thing I did was got my star ready by taking some spackle and filling in that hole, and I'm just shoving it into the hole and removing the rest with my finger. And then I'm going to take my canvas, and all I want from here are two of the wood pieces that'll be the little stands for the words. So I just pulled off the canvas using my screwdriver, and then I'm going to use my muscles to pull those two apart and just use the short side and then one of the long sides. And then I'm going to measure to see how long I need those stands to be and mark those with my pencil. And then I'm going to take this outside and cut it with my miter saw. And I'm using an electric one, or the power tool kind, but you can use your miter box and saw to do this because it's very soft wood. And then I'm going to take my wood plank that comes in a package of, I don't know, 5 or 6, I think, and cut that in half and also measure to see how long to make them. And then I'll cut those down as well, and then use my sanding block to get that sanded and nice and smooth on the edges. Then I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in white and paint my entire star using a foam brush from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to make sure to get all of the edges and corners, and you can paint the backs if you want, but I'm just trying to save time. And then I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in ink, and I'm going to paint my little pieces that will eventually have my words on them. Then I'm going to take some mineral chalk paint and add it to some antique wax, and then give this a super light dry brushing across the surface of my star. And then I'll also drag it around the edges to give it that distressed look and give it a little more definition around the edges. And then I'll top it off with another dry brushing of white. And I always use frames in different DIYs, so I keep my backs just in case I need a kickstand for something. And this is the perfect way to use these up, because remember, it's not hoarding if you use it. So I just determined what angle I wanted it at and then traced around where my star was so that I could cut off the excess and it won't show from behind. And then I'm going to hot glue that to the back of my star, and now it's going to be able to stand. So now I'm going to take my wood pieces and place them where I think they need to be and mark it with a pencil, and then I'll hot glue those onto my star. And I'm going to make sure that there's enough space in between those two stands so that my words won't be too crowded. So then to get my words onto my black pieces, I printed out the words Merry Christmas from my CRICUT design space, and I used the font Dear John, which was from, I'm not sure where it's from. It's either from defont.com or it may have already been included with my CRICUT design space. But anyway, I didn't like how thick it was because in the inspiration piece it's super thin, but I'm just going to do a thinner line when I transfer it onto my black pieces. So I just took my white chalk and rubbed it all over the back of my paper, and then I taped my word down using some painter's tape, and I'm just going to trace over that word using a regular ballpoint pen. And then using a white gel pen, I'm just going to go over all of those chalk lines, and I'll go over it a couple of times until I get it to the thickness that I want. And here's a reminder of our inspiration piece. Now it is 16.5 inches tall and wide. Ours is only 11.5 inches and it's not very thick, but I think it's super cutie patootie. And we only paid $3. So I love how this turned out and I hope you like it too. Our next dupe, we're doing these Hope wood blocks, and I love this so much. It's so pretty. Ours doesn't light up, but this is $47.99. We're using Dollar Tree products, and we're gonna make it for about $11, but it's not gonna light up. So I'm first taking my pieces. I have an ornament, some blocks, and some bottle brush trees, and I'm just gonna get everything ready. Now in the inspiration piece, the trees were a little more green and frosty. I didn't have any more of those, so I'm just gonna have to improvise and make do with what I have, which were these gold trees. So I also kind of ran out of E's in my wooden letters, so just a little tip, if you take an L and an F, you can piece those together to make an E, because there's usually only one E in a package. I don't know why they do that. So I'm going to take my white chalk paint and a sponge brush, and I'm just going to dab my paint onto my trees. And you want to be careful with this because it will flick everywhere. Everything's polka dotted when I paint these trees. So I'm just going to do that on both the large ones and the smaller ones. And I think there's like a phantom shopper that goes before me in all of the Dollar Trees. So the trees that were available aren't the prettiest, and this gold is a little bit in your face. So we're just going to tone that down a bit. So now I'm going to take my church ornament, and it's a little bit too big at the base. It's a hard plastic, but if you have some good scissors, you can cut that down. And then I'll take some more of my white chalk paint and paint my church so that it knocks down that shine. But I also want some of that taupey color poking through and a little bit of sparkle too, because we just have to have that at Christmas. So I'll just make sure that I don't cover everything up. And then to keep my letters in place so that I could paint them white also, I put them on the back of some painter's tape on a paper plate or styrofoam plate. And I was going to paint my snowflake, but I decided to just leave it the way it was. And now for my blocks, I'm using my Waverly Wax in Antique, and I'm just painting it on there and then rubbing it off with a paper towel. And there's always ugly sides that don't take the wax very well, and it looks more painted rather than a stain. So just make sure you put those at the top and bottom so they don't show. So I was trying to figure out how to get this bark-like finish on these blocks. So I took my foam brush and just made little notches with my finger, just pulled off some of that. And then I'm going to take my mineral chalk paint and start in the middle and just kind of get some variations in there to semi look like wood. It's obviously not exactly the same as the inspiration piece, but it does give that little rustic, woodsy feeling, but it's still pretty cute. So because my snowflake is an ornament, I decided if you can't beat them, join them. So I went ahead, not in real life though, you guys. Oh, I should have edited that out. Well, I'm gonna make holes all through my snowflakes instead of spackling it because I wanted to keep that same finish. Yeah, no, only in the case of holes in your snowflakes do you join them. So now I'm going to start putting everything together, and I first decided which sides I liked best and wanted showing for my blocks, and then I'm going to hot glue my snowflake on the first block and then my letters onto the rest. And then if you notice in the inspiration piece, the blocks go alternating, so one will go forward and then one will go backward and so on and so forth. So that's the way I attached them. And I should have used some permanent adhesive like E6000 or the cement, and I don't know why I didn't, but do as I say and not as I do. And then I'm going to put my trees on top and start gluing those down. They're a little bit cozy, so if you just kind of mush them together, then they'll fit onto these blocks. You could also use the drawers, you know, the little blocks that have the drawers inside. They're bigger, so I didn't use them in this project. But the inspiration piece, theirs are 3 inches wide and ours are 2¼ inches wide, which makes the whole project 3½ inches shorter than the inspiration piece. But ours is a whole inch taller than theirs. So I think it works out perfectly. So here again is the inspiration piece for $47.99, and here's how ours turned out for about $11 if you count the letters. But I think this is so pretty, and I'm not decorating in gold this year in any of my rooms, but my sister is, so she's gonna get this one. I love how pretty this is. I love how soft the trees look with that snowy coverage. It's just so pretty, and it reminds us of the hope that we have in Jesus. I love it, and I hope you like it too. Wayfair dupe number 4 is a very loose interpretation of this snowburst plastic lantern. It says it's $39.99, but it's since gone up in price, so it's now $46.99. But I'm using this plastic lantern that I found at a yard sale a long time ago. You can see the dust is still all over it, and I got it for $1, but I had no idea that the lights inside actually still work. I was really surprised about that. So the Wayfair version lights up and it throws out glitter like a snow globe automatically every 45 seconds or so. So ours is not going to do that, but it'll still be super cute. So I just took it all apart, and after I cleaned it all up, I took it outside to my painting station and used my Krylon matte finish red paint, and I'm going to give this a couple of coats. It actually took about 3 coats to get that black covered completely. So once it was dry, I'm going to roll up my little string lights and then replace the bottom in there and screw that back in. And then I'm going to take my little window panes and clean those all up. And then I took a Q-tip and my white chalk paint, and I'm going to make little dots all over the place in random spots so that it looks like snow. This is a lot harder to do because I did want it to look like snow and not just like polka dots. And then because my lights were going all over the place, I took some tape and taped it down to the base. And then I'm going to replace my window panes, and then I added some faux snow from the Dollar Tree and made sure that it was covering all of my wires. Now you can see in the inspiration piece that it's the 3 gnomes. I was going to use my little ceramic gnome from the Dollar Tree, and then you could also use an ornament like the red sled, which I did try to use also, but I decided instead that I've been wanting something that just has the trees inside, so I used a couple of packages of my Dollar Tree trees and put 3 of them in there, put it back together, and it's done. And here it is at night with the lights on. I love the look of this. It's not really a blue light, it's really a clear light, but on camera these never show up right. And here it is in the daylight, and it's even prettier. I love the red against the white and that snowy look with the pretty trees. My version ended up costing me $4, but if you look at the Goodwill or thrift shops or yard sales, I'm sure you can find lanterns. This is a plastic one, but if you have an old one in the garage that you're not using, this would be a great way to utilize it and put it in your Christmas decor. I love how this turned out, and I hope you like it too. For this Wayfair dupe, I'll be recreating these adorable skis. It's listed as $29.99, which I think is pretty reasonable. And this never happens with dupes, but ours is going to actually be larger than the inspiration piece. So I'm using this 24-inch Easter sign from the Dollar Tree, and it's a little more than 6 inches wide. So instead of blowing a brain fuse trying to calculate what the middle is, I just took a sliver of paper and cut it down to the actual width of my board, and then I folded it in half and got my center line. And then I made the curve of my skis at the top by making a template out of copy paper and tracing around it onto my board, and then using a sharp craft knife, I'm going to make a bunch of swipes down that middle line, and then eventually it's going to snap in half. And then once I get it broken down, I'm going to sand the edges and make it nice and smooth. And then I did the same thing for the curves, but this took a lot of time and patience, neither of which I had. So instead, Michael J took it outside and used a jigsaw, I think, to make those cuts for me. So then for the ski poles, I'm using 2 of the metal pieces that come with the Dollar Tree magnet discs, and I use that in another DIY. And then 2 of the long barbecue skewers. So I painted my skis with some Waverly chalk paint in crimson. And again, I didn't paint the backs, but you really should. I'm just conserving paint and trying to save time. And I was so super surprised. This only took one coat, and that never happens either. And then I painted my skewers in white, and you can usually find these in the summertime with the barbecue goodies. And then while I have my white paint handy, I gave the metal circles a little snowy finish so that they weren't so shiny. And then I also painted 4 of my snowflakes, which I'll go back and then add those holes like we did before with my crocodile. Then to make the stripes, I used some painter's tape and put 2 lines at the top and 1 at the bottom, just like the Wayfair skis, and then used my sponge brush to dab some white chalk paint on there. I like to pull my tape off while the paint is still wet. A lot of people ask me about that, especially with chalk paint, because chalk paint, once it dries, sometimes it can get a little bit flaky. So now I'm going to glue my snowflakes on, and I'm just using my hot glue, and I just used a little bit so that it doesn't seep out and show from underneath. And now to put my poles together, I first punched a hole as close to the center as I could get with my crocodile, and then took my big fat nail to make it a little bit bigger so that my skewer would fit inside there. And then I took some glue and put it on the underside of that metal circle all the way around the skewer, and then rolled it so that the glue didn't drip. And Mr. Google said that these are called baskets, just in case you wanted to know. So now I'm going to crisscross my skis and glue them in place. And so I'm just going to make a light pencil mark to see where it needs to be. And then I can see how long my poles should be. So I'll cut those down with my wire cutters and then get them to the length that I want. And then for the handles, I'm using some jute twine and gluing it down a little bit, and then wrapping it around there and gluing the end down. And I want this to be kind of messy looking, so I'm just not being real careful with the wrapping and just making it, I don't know, rustic looking. So I felt like I had seen this pattern before as I was making these. And if it looks familiar, this is a Dollar Tree ornament that they have this year. And it's a mini-me version of ours. So then I glued one of my poles onto the ski and then added another dot on top of that to hold the second pole while I wrapped some wire around the middle. And this is Dollar Tree wire, so it's super thin, and I had to wrap it around a couple of times, and then I left some extra on top so that I could secure my greenery with it. So I put 2 Dollar Tree Christmas stems together using a zip tie. And I don't know if you noticed, but my wire and my zip tie are both red, and I didn't mean for that to happen. I just happened to have them. So I'm just gonna put those 2 stems together and then cut the excess stems off with my wire cutters. And then I wrapped it onto my skis with that extra wire and twisted it super tight on the back. Now I'm going to add some holly and pine cones from a 3rd stem and just hot glue that to the middle area. And then I thought it would be really cute to add these white berry stems that kind of reminded me of little white snowballs. And then I added some more white paint to the bottom of the baskets, and it's done. And here's a reminder of our Wayfair inspiration piece for $30. And here's our maybe $8 dupe. $8 would be the max. Plus you have stuff left over, and it's 6 inches larger. I'm so excited about that. So if you want to see more Christmas DIYs, don't forget to visit Linda and Lisa's channels and watch their videos. Let them know I sent you. Remember the true reason for the season. Thank you all for the love and prayers you've been sending. And if you need prayer, and who doesn't, you can go to the community tab of this channel and let our prayer warriors pray for you. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye.